Thank you so much for coming today. We'd like to welcome you to the 5,689th meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago. And with that, I invite Eric Kemple to come up and give us the thought of the day.
Thank you, Madam President. So as we're about to enter into Black History Month and the birth month of Frederick Douglass, I wanted to just quote a little bit from him. He wrote an open letter to his former master. It's an incredible literary device to get his point across. Obviously unbelievably moving, yet completely calm and frank. And frankly, altogether brilliant. And it gets me every time I read it. It's a wonderful passage. And it's a long passage, so I'll just share with you one excerpt. After he talks about the events that led him to eventually resolve to someday run away, he goes on to say, the morality of the act of running away, I dispose of as follows. I am myself. You are yourself. We are two distinct persons, equal persons. What you are, I am. You are a man, so am I. God created both and made us separate beings. I am not by nature bound to you or you to me. Nature does not make your existence depend on me or mine to depend on yours. I cannot walk upon your legs or you upon mine. I cannot breathe for you or you for me. I must breathe for myself and you for yourself. We are distinct persons and are each equally provided with faculties necessary to our individual existence. By leaving you, I took nothing but what belonged to me, and in no way lessened your means for obtaining an honest living. Your faculties remained yours, and mine became useful to their rightful owner. I therefore see no wrong in any part of the transaction. It is true, I went off secretly, but that was more your fault than mine. Had I let you into the secret, you would have defeated the enterprise entirely. But for this, I should have been really glad to have made you acquainted with my intentions to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And so as we get ready for our speaker, please honor everyone's time and keep your questions succinct. One question per person. For those in the room, if you could please wait until the microphone comes to you so that our guests on Zoom are able to hear your questions. We will take all questions and remarks at the end. Zoom participants, please put your questions into the chat box. And with that, if Chuck could please come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Alita. Okay. Alex Kruzel founded Telesto Strategy with the global vision of regenerating the planet. With 2 decades of work on climate positive growth, Alex dedicates her career to building a more inclusive, circular, and net zero future. In alignment with this mission, in alignment with its vision, Telesto Strategy is a woman-owned, mission-driven, and lifetime net zero management consulting firm. To deliver on its vision, it partners with private and public sector organizations to integrate ESG and sustainability to their core strategies. Although there are many environmental tipping points, Alex has oriented her firm to advance global net zero by 2050 with 3 key pillars. First, Telesto partners with corporates to set science-based net zero targets and implement emissions reductions plans. Second, to address growing financial risk, Telesto supports organizations in mitigating climate transition and physical risk. Third, given the funding gap to advance global climate goals, Telesto works to catalyze capital toward green infrastructure and climate entrepreneurship. Prior to founding Telesto Strategy, Alex served as president of Market Strategy Group and in Deloitte's emerging market practice. As the foundation of her global career, Alex volunteered in Peace Corps as well as educator in northern Mozambique. Alex recharges through travel and dance parties with her daughter, a Chicago native. Alex gains inspiration from the grit, internationalism, and architecture of her hometown. And this, at the same time as thinking globally, Alex commits herself to local engagement with service to the Chicago Council on Global Affairs and other boards, guest lectures at Northwestern University, and looks to increase her support to civic organizations in the city and region. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone. 20 years ago, as Chuck mentioned, I started as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mozambique, and I was sort of crabbily descending a hill in the rain, my third day in country. And, I didn't have the right footwear. I didn't know where I was, 3 days in Mozambique coming from Chicago. And I run into my host sister, and I was soaking wet, covered in mud. I'm like, what am I doing here? And I said, I hate the rain. I was just complaining. And she said, well, Alex, I love the rain. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, Alex, when it rains, it means we have water to drink. And that was a moment I never forget. It stayed with me. It still does. As a first time in my life, all the privilege that I had to take something like that for granted came to the fore and spurred a career in sustainable development and economic growth, and also the intersection of climate and business. And so that's what I bring forward today. I want to keep this to a conversation as much as possible. I have more slides than what are necessary. So it's a consultant in me. I can't help it. We live for PowerPoint, so I apologize in advance. But we'll keep them brief. We'll go through them quickly. One of the things that Chuck mentioned in terms of these different areas in which we support, the slides I chose for today, given the Rotary Club and all that you stand for, and the hope that you do bring to so many global communities, is this third piece on how do we finance this transition. If public sector had it figured out, the financing for a green transition would be solved for, and the policies would be in place. Thing is, we're not there yet. And so part of what my firm is trying to do is be a catalyst in this space and work with private sector, say, how do we catalyze more funding to achieve the sustainable development goals, our climate goals, and leave a better place for many generations to come. So with that, next slide, please. Next slide, we've got this covered. Thank you, Chuck. So really quick, I have 10 minutes, so I'll maybe speak a moment or two about the state of play. Climate capital is now relevant to everyone, whether you maybe realized it or not. The way I got pulled back into the question of public sector finance and climate capital, where my career started with Deloitte in the emerging markets practice, was actually because of corporate clients now saying, look, what are these new green instruments? What are these new investment opportunities around the energy transition, not in our backyard only, but globally? What is the business opportunity here? And how does this then have secondary effects around economic growth, again, that are good for planet, people, etc. So let's go to the next slide, please. Climate finance, for reference, I'm happy to share these slides. We'll go on to the next. Some context here for those. We'll keep going. This is all to say there's a lot going on. So right now, in terms of where these funds are flowing from and to, and the magnitude, is something to be mindful of. Climate capital might not have been in green financing, sustainable financing, there's many terms for this, should be on everyone's radar. Why? Because we're not talking about tens or hundreds of millions or even billions. We're talking about trillions in net new investments. And on the other side of the coin, there's trillions of dollars of assets that are at risk for immediate depreciation because of the energy transition. And so what I'm trying to show here is for us to get to a 1.5 degree pathway to keep emissions at a place where our planet can safeguard our children and our children's children, we need to keep it well below 1.5. That's what about 190 different global countries or entities agreed to with the Paris Agreement. And so we need to get to a very high place, and we haven't capitalized those targets yet. And again, if public sector financing had it figured out, we wouldn't be here discussing it. So let's go on to the next slide. This is a little bit more depth for anyone interested, where the flow is coming from, what type of instruments, happy to discuss later. We'll go on to the next slide. One thing that I want to point out too, regarding my sort of background too, coming from Peace Corps, and I believe the Rotary Club would also have an appreciation for this lens, it's not just dollars and cents, it's also about vulnerable populations and climate risk. And those who are least responsible for climate change are also those that are most impacted by it. So how do we also solve the climate financing gaps by geography? It's much easier for investors to finance in their own backyard as opposed to think through a global spectrum. So I highlight here where our money is coming from and where our money is going. And overall, there's just not enough where the most vulnerable populations are in Africa, in the Global South, in the Pacific Islands, and ASEAN. We can continue. Next slide. So the challenge, and this is what my firm is working on. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what's preventing investees from attracting climate capital? How do we make sure there's enough of an ecosystem here? And how do we fulfill and mitigate this gap? Let's go to the next slide, please. So when we talk to investors, I'd like a show of hands. Is anyone in the investment space in this room? Okay, potentially a few, right? When we talk to investors, the first thing they say is like, okay, so you have all this money, right? There's a lot of projects, and what's the issue? They say, well, Alex, there are no bankable, shovel-ready projects. Whether it's infrastructure for renewable energy, that's a big ticket item, or if they're small scale tech plays, we can't find them. So, okay, that was kind of interesting for me. And that's what I sort of went off for several years. Finally, now getting in the space for investees. Whenever I talk to the government side who have these big ticket infrastructure projects or the entrepreneurs in climate tech, they say, well, Alex, where's their money? We hear about the money, but it doesn't exist. So both sides are saying like the same thing, if only we could sort of meet them in the middle more. So my firm is working on building what we call this connective tissue. So connecting the money, especially from private side, that's flowing downstream and working with financial institutions as intermediaries. And then finally with the destination of climate capital. So let's keep going. I'll spotlight a few things. We'll go on to the next one. This is for a more granular discussion. My firm got its start, well, again, 20 years ago or so when I started at Deloitte with its public sector practice after Peace Corps. But more recently as Telesto, we started with the US Department of State, their Office of Global Partnerships. And at COP26, President Biden announced the Coalition for Climate Entrepreneurship. And that is a new funding vehicle for private sector financing going from North America largely to Global South on climate-related investments. And so in 2022, there was a global tech convening in San Francisco that we supported with the Department of State to bring together the private sector investors, a lot of it coming from the tech side. And then from there, we were invited to host a White House side event with the US Africa Leaders Summit. And that's where we had a curated sort of convening, I'll go into more detail, about the right players from public and private sector side to, again, build this connective tissue and infrastructure between the investees and the investors. That was at a macro level for the continent of Africa. And then we took a deep dive with a special delegation to Ghana, where we then had a more sort of curated experience and had, okay, what does it look like given the enabling framework in a place like Ghana? How do we make this, what does the question look like about mitigating this financing gap in a country specifically? And so that's been our work over the past year. And also with this coalition, we've been putting together a climate tech accelerator program, which will then make sure there's enough climate businesses in a place like Ghana, but then a scalable model that we're taking to Vietnam, to Thailand, to Kenya, Morocco, and other places to then say, okay, let's take what we can from Ghana and then customize what we can for these other geographies. And then we've been working on sort of a virtual convening series, other ways to keep people engaged on this topic. Next slide, please. So in terms of recent convenings, I've gone over these. Again, I had a longer presentation that was necessary. I wasn't aware of the timing on this. We'll go to the next. Some highlights from the past couple of years, just to showcase our events. You can keep going. This was from our White House side event. The different players who we'd like to see come together. You may have heard of blended financing instruments, and that's just a fancy word of saying like, okay, private sector wants to get involved in some of these great business opportunities, but they need a hedge. They need money from public sector or philanthropies to be the concessional funding so these deals can be made. And so when you have different players coming in from these different sectors, you can actually make those sort of projects viable. But it takes a lot of these logos on a page coming together, and we all know that coordination is not always easy or viable. So again, that's part of the work that we're trying to figure out. One of our events had representation, if you can keep going, from a number of countries. And then if you go to the next slide, what it looked like in Ghana specifically. So seeing some local players and how this might look at a more micro level. So you can keep going. Keep going. Like I said, part of the equation, and I think what the world is counting on, is that climate tech will solve these problems for us so that we don't get to a tipping point that's irreversible. And I mentioned different tipping points for the environment. The one that I'm really focused on are emissions. And so climate tech, a really viable business opportunity, but how does it work in terms of a place like Ghana? And how do you cultivate more business that's inclusive too, women-led quite often, around climate mitigation and resilience? So we put together the accelerator programming in Ghana, and we've been working on it for the past year or so. And this is from the industry showcase event. We had a pitch event in Accra last year. You can keep going. And then, it takes a number of players to make these things happen. Working with the Aspen Network from the Aspen Institute has been one of our partners in all of this work. U.S. Department of State, like I said, the Coalition for Climate Entrepreneurship, and working with a local university in Ghana, Academic City. You can keep going, please. We bring a number of players to our projects, and we work across countries, regions, and continents as needed. This is sort of a spectrum of who we tapped into for our work in Ghana, leaning heavily on our local partners and local ecosystems already in place and building off of the existing momentum. In Chicago, we're looking to do a lot more. So I look to those of you in the room today as maybe one of my asks of you all. If there are creative ways we can partner on climate tech and climate here in Chicago, we want to give as much as we take. And we have more questions than answers. And I think building those watering holes here in Chicago is part of the way we can champion a really brilliant story that I can tell you firsthand the world doesn't know about. Going to COP and explaining, oh, I'm from Chicago doing this work. People are like, oh, I didn't know that was happening in Chicago. Yet there is a lot of brilliant work in ESG, sustainability, and climate that is happening. So I say that as a plug to say we'll partner with those who are interested. A little bit more about my firm. Chuck spoke to those 3 pillars. I think, again, for the climate agenda to be successful, and again, it's not about climate, it's about future of humanity. We need to make sure that businesses can understand how they integrate it more holistically in a way that makes sense for them into their business strategy. So we do that, if you can go back, as part of incorporating into their strategies, setting a direction. A good starting place is the question around emissions and new products, new business models, new services, new energy mixes in their stack. And then from there, it's how do you get it paid for? ESG, sustainability is often viewed as a cost, not as a revenue generating opportunity. And I think it's opportunity to shift that paradigm too. And then from there, it's sort of like, how do you make demonstrable progress with the new California legislation? We're going to need third-party assurance on some of these things that are being regulated on today. They're no longer optional. So how do you make sure businesses are ready for that challenge? And then we track that too, right? The SDGs need to be measurable. So does the impact of any organization. So those are the ways that we partner. And the next slide are some of the organizations that we've worked with on these different questions. So we work on purpose in a generalized fashion across industries and sectors to hopefully bridge some understanding amongst them. And then from there, next slide, my contact. It's been an honor again to engage with you all and share a little bit of what I know and more importantly, what I'm trying to learn more about. And so thank you all for the time.
Do we have any questions?
I can start with one. Thanks, Alita. Great presentation. Thank you for coming here today. You mentioned about partnerships and work you do in Chicago. Could you give us some examples of the types of organizations or companies you're currently working with in Chicago, just to give us some idea of sort of where our brain should be in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, over the past couple quarters, we just signed on one of the, Chicago's biggest sports teams, and we're helping them decarb. And so they know it's a piece to their puzzle too, and to be a good steward of the reputation of Chicago, to build goodwill with their city and globally, to protect their brand, that they need to be doing that. So that was a big win for us. And as a boutique and growing firm, it was exciting for everyone. We're also working with, in the water management space here for Chicago-based companies, as well as a major standards development organization here. Again, along for the second, okay, how does purpose and sustainability fit into their business growth strategy? And then for the former is, okay, well, we need to get set on ESG. What does that look like as a starting point for this conversation? Because we respect that for some of them, going to an emissions question first, well, they might need to sort of take a step back and do a broader inventory of, okay, emissions is one part of the E in environmental social governance. What are the other components too? Thank you.
Any other questions?
I know you mentioned you started out in Washington, D.C. with the feds. That's great. But how about on the state level? How about Illinois? How about the city of Chicago or the various environmental groups here in town? What's your approach there?
Yeah, sign me up. I'd love to help more. I moved back to Chicago about 8 years or so ago. I was living in sub-Saharan Africa. And then a lot of my network was truly global. And so coming back to Chicago and getting a sense of who's doing what, it's a huge point of emphasis for my firm. So I'd love to learn more. I've reached out to the city government with some ideas in terms of, how do you do sort of more of these activities in our own backyard? So I'm very keen on it. And like I said, I want to give more than we take.
First of all, thank you to Rotary for having me today. When we talk about like ESG investment, there's investment groups, and it's easy for them to want to work with the green companies. Where is what does it look like trying to convert the quote unquote bad guys? Is there a space to try and get them to invest so it's not just a cost, like an energy company, a gas company looking to invest in newer, cleaner energies? What does that conversation look like overall?
Yeah, what a good question. And if I had a good answer for it, I think a lot of businesses would run with it. I think there's going to have to be a reckoning in the boardroom, and some of the boardrooms that I've privileged to be part of or support on these questions, there's a degree of discomfort. Some don't want to accept the stranding of physical assets related to a fossil fuel economy. So that means, right, so businesses typically say, oh, I have 30 years to make money off of this asset because of the inherent value of it. But because the transition is happening quicker than anyone expected in terms of the uptake of renewables, and if you look at the levelized cost of energy analysis by Lazard and Citibank, they say, okay, board members, you really need to wake up because that depreciation period is no longer what you thought it was. These assets, especially anything that's new, are not going to have the payback period you need to make them viable. And that's just because of the cost of things. So now it's cheaper to install new solar than even to maintain existing sort of natural gas pipelines, for instance. And obviously it's not apples to apples. You need base load, you need consistency, right? There's nuances to that argument, but it's quite fraught at the board level. I think one of the best levers is, how do you be the first to divest in some of those things while you can still make a buck and reinvest in other places? There's not unilateral support there, and some of that has become politicized, and some of that is not a full understanding of how these risk models work. We have standardized some of those models with TCFD, if anyone's interested or heard of that, and that can help a lot, bridge some gaps.
Hello, my name's Chris. Just a couple questions. There's different weather patterns, whether it's hurricanes or polar vortexes. Do you have any data that you can speak to? Or are we also just in a time where, things are changing, maybe recency bias? But just kind of like enlighten us on, where you see the weather patterns and just the kind of the future.
Yeah, I try to take a science first approach, and we try to leverage the best science. So I point to NOAA and IPCC and the Stockholm Institute on these tipping points that I mentioned. And I think there is consensus from the science perspective saying, look, some of these models that have predicted warming are even too conservative. That's the science that we leverage, and that's considered best in class. There are anomalies, there are things that do happen, but if you look at a broader period, and then where I try to go to with this conversation, and this came up in our dialogues at COP28 in Dubai recently, is those who have had a leading voice in the environmental movement have tried to persuade people on science, not about maybe shared humanity or business reason and logic. So I try to go to those two places as opposed to something that maybe can get more politicized or ostracizing for people. I think there's plenty of other ways that we can sort of build some common understanding and an impetus for doing things differently. Thank you for that.
Could you paint a brief picture of the ideal partner for you and what you're trying to do?
Thank you. I did not plant that question. I'm looking to work with those who are a couple sides, corporate, large corporates. And why? So I'm type A. I can be simple-minded in things. When I read several years back that it's about 100 companies on this planet are responsible for 80% of all emissions, it's like, oh, voila. The consultant in me loves that. It's like, oh, there's just 100 companies, and each one of them has about 12 to 15 board members. We're talking about 1,500 people that have to think differently. It's not that hard, right? But yeah, right, it's China Coal, it's Aramco, it's Gazprom, right? Those are our largest emitters, and they're not changing their tune anytime soon, right? So I also have to be pragmatic and not only live on Mars sometimes. So, that's the balance I'm looking to strike. So we do want to work with corporates, and I think if they get it and say, look, this is not just about costs and compliance. This is about one of the biggest generational opportunities for business that human history has seen. You can have many different conversations from that lens, and that's where I'm looking to go with it. On the government side, though, I'm quite interested as well, because government is being quite active, and I learned this at COP. At COP, it was really fascinating seeing the negotiations happen. And I saw some downtrodden negotiators saying, look, I feel like maybe my leadership has failed at the national level because maybe they weren't strong enough, or things get muddled. But at the city level, that's where things are moving. And so that's where I'm really excited to be part of that city level initiative here in Chicago. And so city leaders working on this topic too, very keen to get involved with.
Could you expand that just a little for what I would call the direct partnerships, small firms like you, that you would work with to work with these other larger organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So those who are working, in sort of policy development, too, smaller firms happily would work side by side. That's not sort of a capability that we have. Legal services, there's plenty of boutiques that are out there that are looking to think about, climate litigation readiness. So some of those, absolutely. I'm open to it all. And as a small business that's woman-led and woman-owned, we want to support others like that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for our speaker. Let's give her another round. And so, gotta get all my stuff in order. We want to give you a thank you gift, which is a wonderful Rotary mug to have your coffee or tea and keep it self-sustainable. And then you will receive in the mail a package of cookies from Al's Cookie Mix. That is the nonprofit we are supporting every meal. Al is a great friend of mine, but he started a cookie company for his autistic son so that him and his friends were able to have jobs once they aged out of the CPS system. So here you go, and I hope you enjoy your cookies. Thank you so much. And next, Sarah would like to come up and introduce, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Sarah. We would like to welcome my visiting Rotarians in the room. We have one international visiting Rotarian.
Got my friend in client, Dr. Michael Hoffman. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. My name is Michael Hoffman. I'm from Germany, a Rotary Club Augsburg, which is near Munich. I own a small consulting company with 50 people in Germany, and yeah, I studied in Cincinnati. That's 15 years ago. That's when I fell in love with Chicago, and that's why probably I also founded a subsidiary here, and I hope to be here more often. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Let me introduce you, Luis Vecchio from the Rotary Club of Grand Rapids.
Hello, all. My name is Luis. I am moving to Chicago in the near future. Don't have an exact date, so I figured I would stop by. Thank you all for having me today. I really did enjoy the speaking. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. And I'll be around, I guess. See you soon.
And then we have guests in the room.
I'd like to introduce Tony, and she's with the State's Attorney's Office. And Tony, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Walt. Thank you all, everyone, for allowing me to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first day, my first meeting here. So very interesting information. So I look forward to learning more about the Rotary organization, Rotary International. Again, I'm from the State Attorney's Office, so if you all ever need anything, please let me know. And also, in the near future, I'm running in the next election cycle as in the aldermanic race. So just wanted to share that. Thank you so much.
We've got one more.
Yeah, hi, I'm James Fox. I was put onto Rotary by a very good friend of mine, Carl Treelevin, who's a past district governor, and introduced me to Connor, who's the current district governor here. And so they recommended I come in and see a little bit more about the inner workings of Rotary. And I've been involved on the Rotary grant side for a nonprofit that I was involved with for, I guess, 11 years. And I'm very happy to be here today. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. And I think that's all our guests. Okay, these are all out of order. So we'll just hold off. So can we go to Susie's slide? There we go. So Sarah?
Okay, good afternoon. I am very excited to bring to you today one of our first scholarship winners. So for those who don't know me, I am Sarah Buck. Together with Wes, we are the co-chairs of the Community Service Committee. And this year, the committee put together a request for, well, I was gonna say request for proposals, I don't know what else to say, for scholarships, service-based scholarships. This is the first year that we did it. And I am very excited to be able to introduce to you one of our winners. So she'll be coming up here in just a moment. Her name is Susie, and she, I hope, will tell you about all of the wonderful things that she has done historically as part of her service. She's originally from Cameroon, so she has done a lot of service in her own country. And then she has brought that service mind here to Chicago, where she also volunteers with her church by cooking. So I told her about the Cornerstone thing. So maybe on a Wednesday she can come out there. She also helps some elderly with their activities of daily living, and as well as clothing and feeding some homeless in her own neighborhood. So I don't want to steal her thunder. I am just excited that she is here, and come on up and share your story with us.
Thank you so much. My name is Suzy Ngafo Kenye. I am originally from Cameroon, a country in South Africa, in Central Africa. Before immigrating to the United States at the end of 2021, I worked as an accountant in a small company. I'm currently enrolled at Truman College, where I'm pursuing my associate degree in accounting. Helping people has always been my motto since childhood. I use my salary to buy books for children in my community and teach them how to read the French alphabet, which is my first language. In Chicago, I volunteer at my church, where I'm cooking for people in need. I'm very happy to have been selected to the 2024 Rotary Scholarship. This will help me a lot in my education as a new immigrant. I'm still struggling with language, but it's okay. I'm getting better every day. So I think that will be good. Thank you again for this opportunity. I will be going to Cameroon in 1 week, so I'll be happy to share this wonderful opportunity with my community, my family. So thank you again.
Congratulations again, Susie. So as we said, upcoming volunteer opportunities is Cornerstone. Every Wednesday, we volunteer at the Cornerstone Center, in which we feed the housing insecure and food insecure in the community. We give out 95 to-go meals, and then we also feed 45 to 50 people in-house. So we serve them, and we have dinner, and we have discussions with them. There's some karaoke that happens. It's a whole thing. The first Wednesday of the month, we celebrate anybody's birthdays that are there and things like that. And so Rotary has been a huge part of helping with that, especially during the holidays. If you think food is expensive, food for 200 people is really expensive, and you would imagine how much butter costs. And so you guys have helped decorate for the holidays. The club has done that. You bought me cases of butter because butter is very expensive, but you need butter during the holidays because everything requires tons of butter to make it good. So we help out with that, but we're always asking people to come. We have 2 shifts from 2 to 5 and 5 to 7. From 2 to 5, you help prep in the kitchen and get the food made. And then from 5 to 7, we bag up the food to go, and then we serve our guests at 6 o'clock. So it's always an opportunity to come out and be a part. Next slide. And we are starting the Rotary Means Business Fellowship. Thank you very much to Timo's office for hosting us on the first Monday of every month. We are bringing back Rotary Means Business in full scale. It is just a new way for us to bring back what Rotary was built around. It was built around business people coming together that wanted to do good work, but also wanted to support each other. So it is open to all Rotarians and also to non-Rotarians, because you just want like-minded people to come together, and it's more relationship-based networking versus just getting into a room and throwing cards at each other and saying, hey, give me some business. So we are going to work together to get to know each other, have a good time, and hopefully get some networking done with people that you can work with. So we're very excited about that. Our inaugural one is this coming Monday, so please come out. And the dictionary project, Wes, would you like to come up and talk about the project?
I'm always happy to come up and talk everybody's ear off about the dictionary project. You know, it's a pretty straightforward project. What you need to do is contact me to volunteer. That's number one. Raise your hand. Number two, I will assign you schools to go to. If you're doing it with a partner, I need to know that also. And then finally, contact the school, set a date to visit their third grade classrooms, and ask them how many third grade students they have. I've been for many years going to a school in Chinatown that has always had at least 3 classrooms of 8-year-olds, some of whom spoke English, and some of whom didn't speak much English. In any event, after that, pick up the dictionaries and you make the delivery. Very simple project. I need for you to contact me, and my email address is in the I don't think it's in this announcement, but it's in the gyrator announcement in any event. So I know you're going to do this, and I will provide you with the names of the schools. Simple project. So let me know if you're interested, and we'll move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. The Dictionary Project is an awesome project, so please be a part. Job one, we are looking for employers. So our job one, we have opened our applications for our summer internship program for our visiting people. Job one is our signature program where we we recruit Chicago high school juniors and seniors, and then we recruit wonderful employers to give them internships over the summer. Those are also mentorship-based internships, not just, we don't want them to just have a job to answer the phone. We want them to learn what it's like to work in an environment, see the different departments that are in that. You know, we've had lawyers that take them to depositions with them, and students call me and they say, Mrs. Williams, I went to a deposition. I can't tell you anything that we talked about, but it was awesome. But it gives them that opportunity to see what it's like to work in a different business environment, not just to be somewhere, but to actually grow and to see what kind of careers that they want to be in. We give them great extensive business training before they get to the jobs, do resume reviews, we do a job fair, we have mock interviews with them, everything to get them ready. We teach them about proper dress, we teach them about Zoom etiquette if they have a hybrid position. You know, we get them to understand that your computer should not be looking at your ceiling and that you should act like you're actually in the office when you're on the Zoom, not like you're at home. You know, how to set yourself up for success. So if you would like to be a part of the Job One committee, if you would like to be an employer, also if you can't employ students who are under 18, we understand that. We also have nonprofits, and you can sponsor a student to go to a nonprofit. The club subsidizes 50% of what we pay to nonprofits. Most nonprofits would still like the other 50% to be subsidized. So all those things are great opportunities to be a part of the Job One program. Our birthday is coming up. We're going to be 119 years old on February 23rd. So we are having a great party at the Beverly Art Center, which is the neighborhood in which Rotary was actually founded, where the Paul Harris home is. It's a wonderful art center that's very excited to have us there and to be a part of that. We are also having entertainment from Fernando Jones, in which we work with him. He's coming to speak on February 20th, actually, and our community service has always done work with them in the Fernando Jones Blues Camp. So he's going to talk about that camp on the 20th, and then his band is going to be a part of our entertainment that night. So it's all about fun, food, and dancing. So we would love to have everyone come out. And so tickets are available. It's $90 a person, $150 for a couple. And the International Service Committee is going to Bolivia, February 19th through March 1st. If you are interested and would like to attend, you can reach out to Marga Hugo. Betsy back there, you want to talk about it, Betsy?
I can talk about it, but also contact me.
Or contact.
We need to know pretty much by Thursday whether you're interested.
Betsy, can you come up here so people on Zoom could hear you? We could fun food in Fernando. Look at that. That's our new tagline for the birthday party.
Yeah, Mark has been out of town, and I've taken over trying to get all of us pulled together. And I talked with the travel agent this morning. She needs to finalize our plans on Thursday so that we have rooms and all of that available. The trip is leaving on the 19th, coming back on the 1st, and there's really two parts. The first part is in Santa Cruz, visiting, doing a lot of tourist type things, and attending Rotary's birthday. We will be gone for Rotary's birthday, but we'll be in a new country and able to help them honor the day too. And then there's also a Bolivia-wide medical fair that Rotary hosts, and we'll be participating in that also, as well as visiting with the club where we're doing a pilot project to test women for HPV that we hope to expand in the future to the entire country and add things like HPV vaccinations and so forth. So, and then the last part of the trip will be visiting Cochabamba and Sucre, where we've done a number of projects over the last 5 or 7 years. So it should be a fun trip.
Thank you.
And if you send an email to Wes, it'll get to me.
Thank you so much. And the reason we're able to do wonderful trips like that and do the work that we do is by donating to the Rotary One Foundation and to the Rotary Foundation. All donations that we give to the Rotary Foundation comes back to us in 3 years and a percentage, and that money is what we use to match the money that we have so that we can do more work throughout the world with our International Service Committee and the great work that we do here in the city. So that is why, you know, everyone says, why do I have to give to the foundation? Because that's how we get our matching money that we get to help to do all the global projects that we've done with, you know, that James Fox can probably tell you a lot about that come out. Those matching funds really double or triple your impact that we're able to do by pairing up with other clubs and other districts and other countries to do the things that we do. Next. Yeah, we're gonna skip that. That's a QR code for the gyrator. If you do not receive it, you can use that QR code. I believe they're on the tables. And now that you've been here, you'll start receiving the gyrator, all of our visiting people. So, but that is our weekly newsletter that says about everything that's going on, all our volunteer opportunities, and finding about all the great things that we do. All of our upcoming committee meetings for all of our wonderful committees. So please, we're always looking for members. Yes? Oh, yeah. I mean, what do we want to raise money for? Let me know.
Just wanted to point out that these are on the tables.
Right. So as Wes pointed out, we have these cute little piggy banks on the table. And so if you would like to put your extra dimes, quarters, $50 bills, $20 bills into our beautiful things, and we will, I'm a little jaded, so we're going to put it toward the Job One program to help make sure we have scholarships to give to our graduating seniors. So we would appreciate all donations for that. Next slide. All of these are all of our upcoming meetings that we have. Sorry. So we have Fernando Jones, as I said, on the 20th. We have Janet that is coming on the 13th. And then we also have Dennis Mullen, which we are doing in conjunction with the Union Leagues Club Veterans Affairs group. So those are all great opportunities we have coming up for meetings. Skip that. And next is the 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do. And Timo and his guests are going to lead us in the 4-way test. If everyone could stand. Do it out loud.
The 4-way test. Things we think, say, or do. Number 1.
Is it the truth?
Number 2.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Number 3.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Number 4.
Will it be beneficial for all concerned? And will it be fun? See, food, fun, and Fernando. There you go. And with that, we are adjourned.